Hi, welcome everyone. This is Yoga. Welcoming you all for the fifth session on all one on day two. This is on education for better performance. But before we go into this, just a recap of the sessions today. So it all started with technology and tactics, analyzing how it plays in individual and team performances. And then we moved on to social impact, how community reach out programs and development programs in football, and how they are able to integrate with the community, but also football into the community. Then we saw how youth development, the recent developments, the technology influences, how it is very important to coach them well, and what are the recent trends in terms of the different ecosystems developing youth. And most recently, just we have finished with women's football session from the perspective of training, strategy, and revenue. So I welcome you all for this session on education for better performance. It is going to be a mix of many things. I take immense pleasure in introducing the panelists for the day. So first we have Ricardo Balveira, my very good friend. Ricardo, congratulations on 20 years in the sports industry, having started in 2001. So he's somebody who focuses on soccer education industry, a specialist in soccer education, coaches education. He right now is the lead international affairs officer for Portuguese Football Coaches Association. Hi, Ricardo.
Oh, Yoga, nice to having me. Thank you for the invitation. Thanks to Global Soccer Conclave and also Sports Next. And to you too, Yoga. Thank you very much for the invitation.
Thank you so much. Next, we are online is Mr. Boris Kubla, Professor, Head of Coach Education, Croatian FA. He's also a UEFA instructor and UEFA Pro Coach. Boris is an expert educator and lecturer. Hi, Boris. Thanks for coming here.
Hi to everyone. Thank you for the invitation. I'm glad to be here with you and to participate in this great event. Thank you again. I hope you will all enjoy and find something new from our side here. Thank you.
Definitely. Next, we online is Gregory Gettinger. Gregory Gettinger is hailing from Vienna. He's a PhD in marketing technology and has extensive background in managing and financing startup projects. He has more than 20 years of experience and demonstrated achievements and success in various leadership capacities. Welcome, Gregory.
Thank you, and thank you for having me. And I'm curious to see how we can convert some tennis skills into soccer skills.
Yeah, coming to it. Yeah, definitely. And next we have, and the last panelist, we have Mr. Dave Kumar Parmer. He's an international sports lawyer who is currently the principal director of Parmer Sports. Dave is also the academic director at ISDE, Spain, the leading law institute in the world. He is a visiting lecturer and a seminar leader at various institutions like Cambridge and Oxford. He was also part of London organizing committee for Olympics and Paralympic Games. So welcome, Dave. It's an exciting panel. Hope you have a great time.
Thank you very much, Yoga. Thank you for the invitation, and yeah, it's going to be great to share minds with these fantastic people on the panel. I hope that I can live up to their billing, really.
Thank you so much. So where do we start? Okay, I tried to put some structure into my queries. So starting with the structural question. So Dave, you have been a sports legal advisor to various professional football clubs in the UK, as well as some legal advisory franchises in Indian Super League as well. So you've literally seen different systems in the world when it comes to football structures. So especially in countries of Asia and Africa, where the football is not structurally sound in so many countries, what should be the way forward to establish the legal structure, right legal structure?
Yeah, you know how to start off with a good question, huh, Yoga? Look, I think one of the beauties about football and sport in general is that it's universal. And with that universality, we have invariably a number of different cultural norms that we've got to consider, idiosyncrasies from different jurisdictions. And we also face different realities, socio-economic realities. Ultimately, the reality of football clubs in England is fundamentally different to the franchises in the ISL, and then of course many other clubs that we advise, like clubs in the Polish Ekstraklasa or in the Bosnian Premier League or whatever it might be. I think the base level for everything within the sports regulatory structure is education? I think the answer is inherent in the name of your panel. And education doesn't have to be formal in the sense that you've got to go and get a master's in sports law or sports science or whatever it is, but education in the truest sense that one wants to understand and be able to acclimatize to what the reality is, as well as to be able to upskill themselves and add value to the sector. In order to have, in my humble opinion, a working regulatory mechanism within sports, you need to be able to appreciate what the contextual reality of the sport is, both on the field or on the court or in the ring or whatever it might be, but both on the field and off the field, how the business of the environment works. And then after that, of course, you're able to realize what the structural framework is, where there could be potential disputes, and where, of course, disputes arise. Then we start talking about the legal and the business structure and how it can be moved on forward from there. But at the base of absolutely everything is an education. Now, of course, you know, I've got the hat of an educator as well, so we can talk about my institution or many other institutions that provide courses in this kind of thing. But again, to reiterate, I don't necessarily mean education by way of paying thousands of euros to go and get a master's. I simply mean by way of actually understanding what the reality of the sport is, above and beyond simply kicking the ball and scoring a goal.
Yeah. I think you put it in a very simple, logical explanation of like really simply understanding the game and understanding the complexities it can bring up, and mostly logical way of approaching and solving the situations in each level, so that even at a big structural level, you can make a lot of changes and improvements. Nice, Dave. Actually,
Absolutely.
great to, yeah. You wanted to add something?
No, I was just going to say, because I think this is of course with, to put it in the most respectful way possible, but this is where we delineate between someone who is, you know, a sport enthusiast or a fan, and someone that is a sports, you know, industry expert. Because the fan, he or she would ordinarily see what happens on the Saturday afternoon, what happens within the 90 minutes. Those in the industry see what happens match day -1, match day -2, all of the logistical and operational issues that happen around it, all of the legal issues that we've got to be mindful of, all of the compliance, all of the business, all of the finance. And I think that's what we've got to really appreciate from an educational perspective before we can start thinking about how we actually progress it forward. And what I've seen with some other jurisdictions, in my experience, maybe some of the other panelists would agree with me or maybe disagree with me, but sporting economies which maybe aren't as developed as the, let's say, the American sporting economy or the English sporting economy or the French sporting economy, sometimes there appears to be a slightly reverse approach where they focus too much financially on things that aren't going to give them the return, and they don't do all of the proactive work in terms of educating, putting the governance structures in place, putting compliance in place, which is going to give you long-term returns. It's the focus on the short-term gains, which then leads to a reverse trend, and sometimes people going financially under. So sorry, Yoga, and sorry to all the other panelists that I
No
talk
worries.
too much, but that's my answer in general to your first question.
No worries. I'm actually going to come back to probably while we're out of things. I still have something left in it, but I'm proceeding with the next ones. So it is actually nice to understand how simple right structures in football can actually result in more participation, talent development, and of course, we ultimately want the best performances. So talking about player performances, I'm just going to Ricardo. Hi, Ricardo. So how football management education in general can improve the football player performances?
Yoga, that's a very broad question. Okay, I would try to approach it in two different ways. The first perspective, I used to say, and I always say that when I'm collaborating with football clubs, that the team will perform well if everything is well, and that means that all the structures should know exactly what they should be doing. Okay, because only that way the player can focus on performance. They will not be like discouraged with something or with certain things. You will be only focused on performance. Okay, so if all the structure knows exactly what to do, they will be focused on doing their jobs, and the player will be focused on doing his job, that is to perform and to deliver good results to the team. Okay, so of course education, as Dev was saying, has a very important role on this process. And as Dev was saying, learning is not only to have courses, to have online courses, to have face-to-face courses. Well, sometimes it's imitating, it's trying to imitate what the others are doing well. Okay, I will go more deeper in this question a bit further ahead, but just to complete what Dev was saying, I believe that the football industry is still very conservative. I don't believe that the industry, this specific industry, answers as fast as other industries to the evolution of the technology, of the skills. I still believe that the professionals of this industry could do a lot better that they are doing right now. Okay, so this is the first perspective. We will educate the people that are on the structures of the clubs so that the players can perform better, because they are all only concerned on the performance. Okay, the second perspective that I would like to deliver you has to be with the holistic perspective of the player. And I believe Boris it's a coach, so he can give us much better insights than myself about this issue. But for us to develop high-level players, we have to develop them as a holistic perspective, and education, not only education in performing in the physical aspects, but all the education, all the knowledge that you can deliver to your players better for you. For instance, I was speaking with the national team, coordinator of the Portuguese national team, and he was saying, I was like saying to him, well, you travel a lot, you should meet many things, and some of the coaches usually they say, oh no, we don't have any time to do that, because it's only to travel from the airport to the hotel and then to the pitch and then come back. And he was saying, usually we try to go 2 or 3 days in advance so the players can have some nice walks in that city, so they can visit the museums, so they can have this different perspectives about things. So in that perspective of holistic development of the player, the education has also an important role in this matter. Yogaraj, thank you for the question.
Thank you, Ricardo. I think you approached it beautifully in a way like how to put structural education in the organization and the ecosystem, but also towards holistic play development. So I think we have discussed something on the performance, and if you're not discussing from the perspective of coach, then what not? So I'm actually going to get into the process of player performances from a coaching perspective. I think it is important to discuss the periodization aspect. I want to touch upon coach education, and I go on to Boris, who shares a great knowledge with coaches from both national and international level. Boris, can you please share in UEFA programs at what stage is coach education, the periodization aspect is introduced? Because in Asian Football Confederation's coaching education system, the concept of periodization is predominantly taught from AFC B license onwards. There are about 2 licenses which are prior to that. Do you think it can be introduced much earlier in Asian federations?
Thank you for your question. Well, it's not easy to answer like that, as question is mentioned from your side. Well, knowledge from every coach is how to adapt to the situation when he is temporarily in which environment, which players are around. They technically has to know biological and physiological and growth and possibilities of the player. When you speak about the periodization, we can talk only about strength and conditional terms and something like that. But periodization is also something when we plan how we deliver information about the techniques and tactics also. So it can't be divided actually from other things in football, and you can really look at it in a total. So the main strength of the coach, no matter which license he has, is to detect what kind of possibilities players have, and how can they catch aims that he will deliver and give to them. This is something that is very important. And if we compare all licenses, it is something which is dedicated to each level of the age or knowledge or the possibilities in the competition. So every coach has to have knowledge to understand what exercises has to deliver, how he can control that exercises, how can deliver all knowledge he has and informations from experience that he wants to get, they want to give to the player. So it is important to know methodical approach, and it's connected with conditional part. For example, what early ages people, or we can say kid, can do and he will do on the exercise. If he can't do any exercise that he will do on the field, he will stop. He can't do that. He will stop and he will start again when he will be able to do, when he will not be tired. So I think that much more important is to deliver information to all coaches on all stages of the level and of education and the UEFA courses or licenses, how to understand biological and psychological and physiological growth of the kids. That is something that is very important. This is a live process. This is the work with the people. And if you work with the people, you have to, as Ricardo says, have different approach and holistic approach. Each player is different, but same age sometimes can't be the same. Some of them are later mature, some of them are not. So you have to understand what is going on the field, what is going on in the periodization. And this is something that has to be delivered in all courses, no matter is it UEFA B course, or is C course, or it's a lower or higher. That is my opinion.
Great, Boris. I mean, like you have literally answered my question in a very, very different way to what I put it. But again, like what we need is the solution. In fact, like what is actually good for the systems. So the way I understand is, irrespective of the licenses, irrespective of the level of licenses, it has to be a holistic input to the player and the coaches to understand how players grow and develop. I wanted to understand, like, when you compare to the times you were like into the coaching education program to the times right now, where the budding young coaches have a lot of information from the internet, do you have any specific sources or access material? Because some seems to be okay and some seems to be not well. So do you have any advices to the current coming generations in terms of, apart from the licensing education, do you have any suggestion to them to pick up this coaching insights?
Yeah, I can tell you that in internet, there is so many information. I agree with you. And the main point of the education is to give principles and information how they can use it and how they can recognize what they can use in process. For example, when you educate players and give them possibility to develop themselves on the different ages of the quality, for example, in technique, we have 5 phases in periodization of the quality that they need to use in exercises. I mean, which kind of level, what kind of level of how hard is that to them to do. For example, adaptation, that is something that is just what they have to do, and they will do it exactly how they know to do it. Then they will take learning. For example, they will learn something and there will be coach to give them some correction. Then they will have some improvement of that kind of knowledge. Then they will do it in some exercise with the tactics. And then they will do it in the game. And that is something that they have to understand. It's not just a copy from the internet. It's not just a copy from the web. You have to have someone on the opposite side of your screen to explain to you why it's that important, how you can use it, and how you can control it. it's very important how to control what you do on the field. If you can't control it, then they will do like they want to, like they know how to do it, maybe with the wrong, maybe with a different way, but something what you want to do, if we'll develop some players, it has to be controlled. It has to be tests. It has to be improved for the players.
Great, Boris. I think it is all about practice and putting it into practice. Thanks, Boris. I just want to pull back Ricardo a bit in this. I know, Ricardo, you've been trying to bring an online coaching education model, and you have a platform for its own. Can you let us know, like, what has been the experience so far in terms of the interest from individuals to these kind of programs?
Yogaraj, you asked me what is the interest of the Indian market to this specific course? Is that
Not
it?
just Indian market, it is just
Asia.
providing coaches all over Asia and growing economies.
I would say that our platform, it's aimed to the average level of coaches. You know, it's not for the top level coaches. It's not for the one that are just beginning. So the platform aimed to countries that are now developing football, you know. So our main customers are in the US and Canada, so North America. I would say that 50% of the people that buy our courses are in the US and Canada. And then we find many people buying on the Middle East, Saudi Arabia, the Emirates, so Qatar and other countries in that region. India, we are having some people buying. I believe that the problems with the cost is something that it's like a barrier for them to buy the courses. Okay, we noticed that we have lots of visits from India on our website, but the conversion rate is not as we would like to. Okay, usually we notice that when we do promos that we sell more in India, so it looks like the question about the price, it's an issue in India. Okay, not as it is in Saudi Arabia and other Middle Eastern countries. Okay, so I believe there is a lot of interest still, although we sell the courses at a very reasonable price. Still, I believe that's an issue for the Indian market to start recognizing that, okay, I should invest more in my education, and I have this specific money for that. And just to finish, of course, if I'm an Indian coach and I have to choose between having my certification course where I have to pay, I don't know, $500 for instance, or some courses to improve myself as a coach, well, I have to choose what gives me the right to get into the industry. So it's perfectly, we are perfectly aware of it. But I'm sure that with the evolution of the market in India, with having more and more coaches certificate with the certificates in India, then we can go to phase 2. It's like, okay, now how can I differentiate myself from the other coaches? Okay, as you were saying, as Boris was saying, there is many content on the internet. What we believe we do is like we curate the information that is all over the internet and try to put it on a comprehensive format so people can get it on the most easier way possible. So I would say that, as in many other issues, the Asian market will be growing for the next few years. I'm sure of it.
Thank you, Ricardo, for giving a complete picture of where the market is, in which continents, and how it is supposed to be. I think you will also comprehended how Boris said, like how not all the information could be useful. How it's about how you put it for practice and then you put it to practice. So thank you on that. And now I think we are talking a lot about player performances, but we need to see how the impact of technology is in player performance. So, hi Gregory, I know you have been working with the current team, which consists of a lot of professionals and experts in computer vision, machine learning, VR technologies, and you've been predominantly working in tennis. First, we want to understand how VR tech is integrated in player development process in tennis.
Well, it's interesting to see what soccer is doing and what tennis is doing. Soccer is the #1 team sport, and tennis is the #1 individual sport. So there are a little bit different perspectives, but what is all the same is that football players, soccer players have to, improve their technical skills, the tactical skills, the mental skills, the fitness. That all is the same for any sport between tennis and football. But what interests me actually, and that's what I wanted to ask this panel actually, is how far is technology in soccer? Because I explained what we're doing in tennis, and I would like to know if you're doing the similar thing in soccer. So for example, what we do is on the player performance is when in our system, when you strike a forehand, we compare that forehand with the ideal forehand, which is computed with artificial intelligence based on your individual biomechanics. So that means that we scan your body, and based on your biomechanical possibilities, your ideal forehand would look like this. And then we compare what you're really doing in the game, and we see the gaps. And then we analyze and say, well, you have to put your shoulders a little bit more to the right. You have to have your elbow up. You have to arm through. You're hitting the ball too late. So we're going through one-to-one in order to get to the ideal motion. That's on the technical level, and you can do it with a forehand strike, with the backhand, with the serve, all that stuff. So you really optimize your motion. I'm not sure if you're doing that in football. You have to tell me. But that's what we're doing in tennis. The second thing what we're doing is before somebody plays a player the next day, we have this player in the database. So you play this player in our system virtually a day before with all the weaknesses and the strengths. So for example, we have Djokovic data there, and we know exactly if it comes to the third set, tiebreak, 7-7, and he has a second serve, we can tell you exactly where he's going to serve to. And it's totally human. I would guess that you have the same database on the free kicks and all that stuff, so that when a goalie has, when there's a penalty, the goalie automatically knows where this guy is going to shoot to, because in 90% he's shooting on the left corner, whatever it is. I'm sure you're doing that, but I'm curious how far you are doing that. And then a lot of on the tactical side. So our people play a player before, and they have exactly the pattern of that player. So what kind of spin, velocity, where's the strengths and weaknesses. So we can really, train a certain stroke pattern. We say, okay, make a long line backhand, and you know exactly where you have to run to the net to volley that, because he's always playing like this and all that stuff. I wonder if the soccer teams are doing the same thing, that before they play another team the next day, that they are in a big hall and they're actually playing that very team virtually before they do it, to optimize the techniques and the tactical way to play that team. I wonder if you're doing that or not. So that's what's curious for me to hear.
Yes, I think when it comes to tennis, the action points probably rest within that frame. Maybe it can be repeated, or it can be action oriented. But when it comes to football, if you consider the open play part of it, there's too much action movements which can be simulated, I suppose. Yes, definitely, as you are talking, set pieces, maybe distances versus the region from where the kick is taken, penalties maybe. But I doubt the same kind of visualizations and action movements can be evolved and tried and tested in football. Maybe I'll leave it to the experts.
Well, one easy question is, do you guys have a database of all players when they hit a penalty, that you know exactly, you have all that, so the goalie knows exactly if there comes James Murray always hits to the left. You have all that. Is that already incorporated all over the soccer industry?
Boris and Ricardo, can you just chip in and share some insights?
Well, Definitely, we have databases about the players from diagnostic institutes and the database from the clubs where they play. If we speak about, if you talk about high level, the highest level of the player, definitely there is a lot of databases in the clubs and information about the qualities, possibilities, and all automatizations we can say that players have. But in football is something what we can say it's a little bit different than in the tennis. There are 11 players in each team. So there are 22 possibilities in each situation on the bigger playground. So that is something maybe that can't be put in the focus in the few possibilities. So also well, we can say something that in football is in invention. If you have something during the game, tactical thinking. If you, for example, take Luka Modric, there is no such a database that will show you what he will do. He will do something that no one will expect, and that will be something that will be advanced for his team. So we can say that data is something that will help a lot, and for sure it helps.
Are you using, for example, artificial intelligence on the tactical side, playing a team, like, you know, running different kind of algorithm? What would be the best to cope with one kind of defense of a team? Are you having the simulations on the computers? Are you working on that?
I can't say that we have that kind of possibilities, but I can say that there are a lot of analysis which shows some situations from the game. And for our players, well, it is a collective sport. It is so many people inside. So so many possibilities we have. So there is a, well, I can say for the football and tennis is definitely different, but it is not something that is minor for the tennis sport. It is something that is very good in the sport industry. That is something that we have 4 moments in the game which can happen during the game, and when you consider all situations, you can prepare that kind of situations for the players and try to repeat it and try to do it on the field during the training sessions. If for example, sorry for interrupting you. Yeah. For example, that kind of example is maybe useful directly for the goalkeepers and for the people which will do some kind of penalty and, for example, some free kicks. So that is very important, and that kind of information and databases are for sure useful, and I think it's big support. But if we compare for the team actions and something like that, it's not that kind of easy to predict information from the movement of the players during the game.
Yeah, no, what I wanted to say is there's a big difference between using analyzers and databases and artificial intelligence. So my question is, have you moved to artificial intelligence yet? Or are you still in the age of analyzers and databases and all that stuff? How far are you in the soccer technology?
From my point of view and my information that I have, I didn't connect with that kind of possibility that you mentioned. You know that Croatia is only 4.5 million people. We are not very rich country. We really produce so many players, but all perfect players or model players are already out of Croatia, and probably something like that will happen maybe in Real Madrid, in Tottenham, or some kind of clubs.
Okay.
Thank you, Boris. Thank you, Gregory. And Ricardo, you want to add up? Yeah, Dave, please.
Yeah, sure. So I believe that football is quite advanced in what matters to technology. What you were talking about, Gregory, about the artificial intelligence. We are giving the first steps now. You know why? Because the databases are growing, and the way to collect data is also growing with the technology. For instance, About 2 years ago, Stat Sports, the Irish company, did a business with US soccer. So they bought, or they got the preference to buy millions of GPS system, so they can use in players, so that they can start understanding patterns on the players, understanding what is the ideal, backhand, not for tennis, but for football in different aspects. Okay, so I believe that they are now collecting that data to do it, but I believe that the most of the coaches and most of the experts, they still think, and I do agree with them, that the collective sports are very much complex to do such an objective analysis to the data. Okay, they would say, and you can ask any coach, any top level coach, they would say, okay, the data will only help me to make the best decisions. Okay, they will only be there to support my decisions and not to make the decisions for me, because due to this complexity of the game. So I would say that everybody is concerned with that. Everybody is aware that the technology can help the teams to be better, the coaches to be better, but still, once again, the perspective is always very conservative about this matter. Like the coaches, they always believe that sometimes you have to leave some subjective space to make the decisions. Okay, and that is what, in my opinion, makes also football and other team sports great, because of the complexity and because of the lack of predictability of what will happen next, as Boris was saying. And I would say, he was saying about Modric, I will say about Cristiano Ronaldo, saying that what makes that player different from the others and make him a top level, it's not doing exactly what is expect for him to do. It's to be a step ahead. So just to finish, the technology is there. I believe that some coaches and some experts are still looking from the best way to use that technology, and the artificial intelligence is getting now into the sport as the size of the database is growing.
Great, great. Yes,
So you are basically where the chess players were in the 70s, where they said human decisions are better than computer decisions, right? And only in the 80s it turned around that the computer became better than the chess player, and then they had to change their mind. I think soccer you still believe that the human decisions of the trainers are better than artificial intelligence decisions, right?
But Gregory, I'm not. I don't think that is a step back from evolution. I believe it can be a step ahead of evolution. Because everything goes in cycles. As we were saying, in the 70s we thought like this, in the 80s we thought like that. So once again, in some things we are still very conservative. We are still one step behind. But sometimes, and that's what for me in football is very interesting, is because some approaches to football are philosophical. You don't want many data, and that's what's make this sport, as rugby, as others, so interesting, because you will never know what will happen next. Not all the time the best team wins, and that's what makes this game so interesting.
well, great. Yes, Dave.
No, just latching on to what Gregory and Ricardo were saying just now, just conjured up images. I'm sure many of you have seen that advert from, I think it was about 10 years ago, the Nike advert, where you had the robots versus the real players, Rooney, Ronaldo, Zlatan, and all that. So when you guys were discussing that, I was thinking of Garry Kasparov and Fischer versus the computer playing chess, but I was also thinking about Nike. So that tells you how indoctrinated I've been by that marketing campaign. But the only parallel I was going to draw, and latching on to what Ricardo said about the conservatism in football, I would agree that overall, from our experience, we work primarily in football, but we also work in in cricket, in volleyball, and mixed martial arts, and a few other sports. Overall, the interest in adopting technology is more slow in football than it is in other sports, certainly when you compare it to tennis and cricket and others. However, using a slightly different lens, in terms of the regulation of football, the use of technology is increasingly prevalent. So when we look at organizations such as Sport Radar and organizations which look at potential issues of spot manipulation or match manipulation, they're very into artificial intelligence, use of data, use of technology, and it's not only reactive in terms of gathering data and then seeing what parallels they might be able to draw. There's also quite a few researches that have been done recently on things like goal scoring patterns and stuff like that, where the ability to try and predict effectively what the outcome of a team play can be. So taking it further from what Boris was mentioning earlier about the innumerate possibilities you can have with team play as opposed to what an individual athlete might be able to do within tennis, cricket, archery, or whatever it might be. Trying to take those innumerate dynamics and still trying to conjure up a computed response. So from a governance perspective or a regulatory perspective, the use of technology is certainly being increased, but you're not going to see that as much at ground level as you might in other sports where the technology is a lot more accessible to the end user. In football, the top end technology is used either for the top end players and the top end clubs in our experience, or with those that are watching to see if something's going wrong. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's a great summary. In fact, you put it a really nice way. I mean, I think we can go on discussing a lot in terms of this, but I just have a few agenda to take away from this panel as well. So just taking a bit away from the technology aspect, I just want to focus on the management aspect of education. We have covered the coach education, we have covered technological education. In terms of the new technology at our disposal, Ricardo, we have esports, we have NFTs. What is your take on this? Does this have to be part of the sports management education curriculum as well? NFTs and esports.
Yeah, well, sure. As the industry advances in sports, it's very important to include all of these add-ons to the industry. I would say that esports is very interesting to be aware of, because it will. I have a son with 12 years old, and he never went to a football match. Well, he doesn't want to, but he's still a fan of FC Porto because he plays on the PS3 or PS4. So he knows the name of the players because he sees them on the game, not on the pitch. So we have to think how to use this to convert fans. That this is a big challenge. This COVID situation help us a lot to understand a bit more all of these dynamics and how can we use these technologies to keep fans engaged, not only playing football, but there are many clubs now creating esports departments to play other games, not only to play these sports games, but also those like Counter-Strike and those kind of games, So it's we have to be aware of that because I believe it's going to be a big industry. For instance, just for you guys to be aware, the esports industry last year produced more revenue than the movies and the music industry altogether. So of course these numbers cannot leave us not thinking about this. Of course, as you said also about the NFTs, the non-fungible tokens. It's something that I'm still thinking about it. It's like something quite new. I'm not sure how the industry will respond to this in sports. Here in Portugal, we have a company called Real Fever that is already operating in that market. But still, well. It worked in some other areas of art and and music, and I'm not sure how it's going work here on sports. This company, this specific company, Real Fever, they made like a connection between, well, I'm not sure how you say it in English, but when I was a kid, I used to go to some stores where I could buy a kind of a book where I would glue the name of the players and the pics of the players, you know. So that approach is a bit like that. So buy digital tokens of football players. They were able to get a lot of investment to the company. So that brings, you know, that turns some lights on. So we should be also attentive to this. But still, as in other industries, these programs of football education and football management should always include like a big chunk of entrepreneurship, you know, and new businesses. So I would say yes, for sure, the programs should include as soon as possible the new technology and the new businesses that are growing around football and around sports, Yoga.
Thanks, Ridora. I think I got what I wanted. And continuing this discussion along for the management education for the executives, I just want to touch upon with Dave. Dave, you are an expert in the legal framework. For those management executives who actually lack insights on to the legal aspects, what are the basics areas they need to focus on or get acquainted, be it like internal conflict management or player management? Just touch upon the logical aspects which they need to understand.
And that's quite a big question, again, Yoga. You've put some very big questions to the panel on this session, so I hope that everyone's able to take away quite a lot from it. Look, I think if we put it in a chronological order, the first thing we need to understand, let's look at the football club or the organization, let's say, that the management executive is working in. Yeah. Let's look at that as a pure business. The first thing we've got to understand is what is the mission of this organization, and then moving forward, what is the vision of the organization. Now, these are fairly standard sort of business terms that you'll come across in any sector, okay? But it's important to understand and appreciate what the objectives of the organization is, and then from there, of course, we can understand how those objectives are going to be met by way of the internal structures and governance and so on and so forth. Once you've got those structures, ultimately the people within the management and in the operations will be complying with those structures, right? Like with any other organization around the world, it could be Manchester United, it could be McDonald's. It doesn't make a difference. Yeah. Then of course we start adding all of the contextual nuances, but what you're there for, yeah, who your stakeholders are, who your constituents are, and then and how you're going to be able to serve these people, and what rules and regulations you're going to follow. So I think it's really you know, starting off at that foundation and then being able to build from there, because we can't, in my humble opinion, start talking about player disputes or all of these other things without actually understanding what the foundations are. Because if we don't have those foundations there, then A, you might not be able to have a dispute in place anyway, because you can't dispute what doesn't exist, right? And second of all, if an issue does arise, then you as the organization or the person that represents the organization has got very flaccid ground to stand on, because you don't have your own position in place. So if we're talking about what we need to understand as executives within sport is first, unengineer the sporting aspect and look at it from the perspective of a business or an organization, and then start applying the sporting reality to it again. And I say this as a sports fan, you know, just take the sporting aspect away, because the reality is sports overall has only started to develop the business aspect over the last 50 years, let's say, okay? Prior to that, sports, inherently the word sport comes from the Latin term deportu, which literally means to divert, to take away. It was just a diversion for millennia, and now it's become a business. but a lot of the people still working within sports carry that mentality. So we've got to unengineer that, and we've got to try and place all of these other aspects into it. And we've got to start right from the bottom in order to ensure that people can upskill themselves accordingly to make sure that the sector keeps developing.
Well, you went into really deep and explained it from a fundamental aspect, which is really nice. Now, I'm just coming to the fair end of the discussion, talking about our industry, I mean, the football industry, and even Ricardo was also mentioning it. It's quite a conservative industry, at least that is what the major accusation is. And if you consider, like, this is quite a question from the Asian side as well. Maybe sports is an established business in Europe and US, but when it comes to sport as a business in Asia, it's all developing up unless and until it's few sports like cricket. But when it comes to football, it's still a great growing business. And for those people who want to come into the industry, they're looking at just the management executive education to come into the industry because the industry literally doesn't open up. So how do you see the management education for executives as an opener for networking and connections? So even I have to literally do this education to myself make into the industry. So how do you see this? Yeah, I can start with Dave, and probably I also go to Ricardo because he touched on the conservative aspect as well.
I think it's a global sector, yeah, and football is played all around the world by billions of people. However, when you get to work in football at industry level, when you get the honor and the pleasure of doing that, you actually realize that it's a very small world, and you get to know everyone very, very quickly, particularly within your part of the sector. And like with many sectors within sport or in other areas of business, when it's a niche, when it's quite small at the top level, it tends to become a bit of a closed shop. So there can be challenges for people, whether they want to get into the coaching side, the executive side, the legal side. There can be challenges for people to enter. And generally that requires two things. First, it requires an open mindset from those within the club, let's say, to be able to open up and invite new people into the group. And second, it requires people that have got tenacity, perseverance, and competence to try and enter into that group. So if we are looking at how does one upskill themselves or educate themselves to try and get into that sector, I completely agree with you. If you can engage in managerial courses, not football managerial courses, but management executive courses or certifications. If you can develop relationships with people, I personally don't like the term networking because it just conjures up images of Facebook for me. And I'm not saying that that's good or a bad thing, but it's just people collecting friends. I think it's more about developing relationships. In football, you're going to meet hundreds of people, but the people you carve out a real genuine relationship with is going to be significantly lower, and they're the ones that are going to assist you and vice versa. So, getting onto courses, building relationships with people, being seen, being heard, attending events frequently, it does require a lot of tenacity and perseverance. And I think a culmination of all of these things will ultimately get you or other people in similar positions to where they want to go. I come across hundreds of students every single year, and the advice that we provide to them is that there's no direct pathway into sports law. Getting a master's is not going to walk you into the door, but it's going to give you an advantage over someone that doesn't have it. Getting you a master's might put you in a position where you can meet new people. That again will give you an advantage. So now I'm going a little bit further from what I initially said. When we speak about education, it doesn't necessarily have to be going to get a PhD, right? We need to educate from the grassroots up. But then if we're talking about entering the sector, then you need to try and tick as many boxes as you possibly can. And then you need to persevere as hard as you can.
I'm definitely going to reconsider the word networking. I'm not going to probably use it anymore after listening to you.
Sorry, whoever uses it is fine. It's just something I try
Yeah.
to avoid using. So I don't mean to cause any offense to anyone.
Fine. Yeah, just it. Your 2 cents on it, Ricardo. What do you think about this aspect of executives making it through management education?
Yeah, just to add to what Dev was saying, even the way that you approach people on the football industry is very conservative. You know, it's a very closed market. Sometimes it looks like it's reserved for those that already work or have some connection with it, you know, or knows the right people. And sometimes it's very frustrating to try to get into the industry. You have to go to the right events, you have to talk to the right people. But I would say that I coordinate hundreds of courses with thousands of students. And what usually differentiates a student from other, it's once again, it's like Ronaldo and Modric. You have to do something different, you know. You have to, do a different feint, or you have to do something that will ring some bells in the people's head, you know. I have some examples from this. For instance, I'm not sure if any of you guys ever went to the Y Scouting event for instance, in Milano, and usually the event is quite good, you know, but everybody is waiting for the after party, you know, because it's in that moment that you really interact with the other guys, you know. And that's important, and you don't find that in many industries, you know. You don't find that in many industries. So you have to find like the right pitch to get into it. We always say like this, and we at Soccer Hub, we usually promote an event called Soccer Hub Showcase, where we say to people that want to work in this specific area to send us a short video with 5-10 minutes with analysis of a match, for instance, something that will set them apart from the other guys, you know, because there are many tools to promote themselves. And we do like a small contest between them, you know, and the one that has more views on their videos, it's the one that wins, you know. So just to go back, the social media, it's a way to do networking, as Dev was saying. Okay, it's not like the main thing, you know. Then you have to go from the digital world to the face-to-face world. Then you have to go to those events, and you have to differentiate yourself from the others. But sometimes it's quite frustrating, you know. Sometimes it's quite frustrating. You have to invest a lot of resources in finding the best way to do it. So once again, be resilient, you know. Always try to find the best way. I believe that yoga, it's a case of success in this area, that went to Europe to have a master degree, then came back to India to put in practice the knowledge that he had during that course, and now he's here with us moderating some panels. So Dev now knows Yogaraj better, Gregory the same thing, Boris the same thing, and sometimes, you know, maybe if I need someone to moderate a panel, maybe I will call Yoga for him to do it. So, well, he's doing the right thing, you know. So follow Yoga example. I think it's the right thing.
I think so. There were some big words, and Ricardo is a good man. So yeah, I think when it was given a topic to moderate, it was a broader. I think most of the questions were broader questions as well, because education. What do you mean, coach education, or like sport tech education, or like legal or management executive? I think we covered literally every aspect. I'm really happy that this panel turned out to be really well. I'm just checking for if any questions from attendees. Yes, I do have one. It's from Manish. His question is basically, in my view, while talking of player development, we must also pay some attention to personality development aspects, which will include several things. This can contribute to psyche and improving the game performance. What is your view, please? I think, Boris, you already touched upon it. Maybe you can retouch it for the attendee. What is the focus towards player development aspects?
Yes. Well, every player wants to be better, and coach's role is to give them possibility to make him better. I can say example of the Luka Modric. He was too small when he was in early ages. So he needs help to help him to become that kind of player that he is today. I will not go all over the way how he became that kind of famous player, but it is really important to have approach individually to each player to give them opportunities to become better. I also can say that the life has to be lived in a better way, which will show possibilities for the player, how he can catch higher demands for him. It can be something that depend of the eating, something of the usual way how they sleep, environment of the family. We actually need to give to all players attention, each attention, special attention, and give them, like Ricardo in the beginning says, holistic approach, and give them something what is individually for him. If you ask any of famous player in the world, especially in the famous club, in the famous national teams, each of them has own personal coach. They have coaches in the club, but they have own personal coach, which care about him every single minute in the day. No matter what they do on the training sessions, no matter what they do on the field, no matter what they do at the home, they are always there to help him. So I think that is also something in the future that will change, that every single player needs to have some person around him for advice, for the way, for support, and for idea what to do to be better.
Well, you perfectly put it. I think from the executive perspective as well, I think it is good to have good mentors who is checking on you regularly as well. So that covers up our panel, and thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Gregory, for opening up the panel with the challenges you put towards football and the way we discussed towards the technology aspect. And Dave, thank you so much for covering the legal aspects, but also logical aspects, and of course Ricardo on lot towards management aspect. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. Hopefully we meet in person soon, some various different events. Thank you so much. Take care. Bye bye.